Hello guys, it's Revolution. So, more and more information about the GOAT that will be the upcoming villain in the next Dragon Ball Super Manga arc, the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc, have been surfacing. Some quite interesting information. Now this isn't necessarily a news video because I don't feel like there's quite enough news to make a major news video about. I do cover news on Revolution, but it kind of has to be substantial news, major news, or something that confirms something and impacts the future of Dragon Ball Super. I don't feel like there's enough news here yet. However, I've noticed some interesting parallels with the information about this GOAT that will be the villain in the upcoming arc that you could say closely correlate to another iconic villain of another iconic franchise, Galactus of Marvel. So we will look at the information at hand, discuss it, and talk about whether this new upcoming enemy of Goku and Vegeta's has been inspired by Galactus of Marvel, and also any other interesting aspects that may give us an indication of where this story is going and whether or not it will be involved in an upcoming new series of Dragon Ball Super the anime. But just before we begin, I want to know from you guys, which continuity of Dragon Ball Super do you prefer? Is it the anime or is it the manga of Dragon Ball Super? Hashtag DBS manga or hashtag DBS anime down in the comment section and your reasons why. So this isn't exactly new news, but obviously the Dragon Ball Super manga is continuing after the Tournaments of Power and after the Broly movie. There are further stories ahead for Dragon Ball Super. We haven't had full confirmation as to whether there will be a new anime series yet, but I expect it will come on December the 23rd at Jump Festa. The Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc is also an Akira Toriyama story, and given that Broly has broken records in Japan in its first week of release, you can bet your bottom dollar that Dragon Ball Super the anime will be back. Like I said, most likely announced at Jump Festa next week, only a few days away actually. Now if the anime does come back, it's unknown as to whether they will go straight into the Broly arc and retell it with all the additional information from Toriyama's extended script that had to be cut down from 3 hours to an hour and a half, or whether they will go straight into the Galactic Patrol Prisoner arc as Toyo Taro has with the Dragon Ball Super manga. But leaks for the upcoming Dragon Ball Super manga have started to surface. The Dragon Ball Super manga has chronologically taken the lead over the anime, which was ahead of it for quite some time. Obviously the anime stopped last March and is continuing with the Broly movie, and hopefully we get it back next year. But here are some of the details that have been revealed. So the GOAT's name is Moro or Moro. I don't fully know how to pronounce it yet, but it's spelled M-O-R-O. My Japanese pronunciation is quite frankly terrible, so I do apologise. I will call him Moro for now for all intensive purposes. Moro has been a prisoner for 10 million years. He was originally sealed by the Grand Supreme Kai.
Gave up the majority of his power. The majority.
Unfortunately, the Galactic Patrol didn't have the power to finish Moro off at that time. Of course, later down the line, a weakened Grand Supreme Kai would take on Kid Buu, who would ultimately absorb the Grand Supreme Kai. Now that tells us that originally the Grand Supreme Kai was pretty damn powerful. Majin Buu tends to only absorb those who are relative, if not stronger, than himself, or have something to add to his own being. For example, he absorbed Piccolo for his intelligence, which means at full power, before he sealed Moro away, the Grand Supreme Kai was likely
multiple times that of
Kid Buu's power. Obviously, in his weakened state, he was absorbed by Buu, and Kid Buu ultimately turned into Fat Buu. Now, Fat Buu was still quite strong, but because of the influence of the Grand Supreme Kai's gentle heart within his body, he actually calmed down from what Kid Buu was originally doing, and that was literally just wrecking everything. However, at full power, the Grand Supreme Kai was in awe of Moro's power and his ability, eating the life energy of a planet, basically all the living beings within the planet. The South Kaioshin and the Grand Supreme Kai together couldn't take Moro down to physical strength. Basically, they had to imprison him, and that used a lot of the Supreme Kai's power. Obviously, he is a god of creation. Now, given that Beerus is hundreds of millions of years old, you'd have to assume that he's been a god of destruction for that amount of time. We know that the god of destruction and the gods of creation are linked. If one dies, so does the other. Whis told us this in episode 55 of Dragon Ball Super. So it does make you wonder, what exactly was Beerus doing when Moro was around? Well, of course, when Majin Buu nearly killed all the Supreme Kais.
Beerus was nowhere to be seen.
But then of course upon Majin Buu's return in the Buu saga, he was also fortunate that Shin survived, and that may not have been the first time, because if Moro had killed the Grand Supreme Kai and the Southern Kaioshin and then the rest of the Kaioshins, Beerus may have been killed then as well. Now you're probably wondering why exactly there were 5 Supreme Kais, one of them being the Grand Supreme Kai and the rest of them Cardinal Supreme Kais, as they were called back then, Kaioshin. It's never really truly been explained in Dragon Ball, but the Supreme Kais are born from golden fruit. We know that Shin, the current Supreme Kai of Universe 7, was born from one of these golden fruit as per the Daizenshu, whereas the regular Kais, the Cardinal Kai such as King Kai, are born from regular fruit. We know that there are Supreme Kais in each of the other 11 universes within the multiverse in Dragon Ball. Do those other universes have more than one Supreme Kai? Not necessarily. They don't necessarily have to either. For example, Universe 10 only had one Supreme Kai in Gawasu, who had an apprentice in Zamasu, who was originally a Cardinal Kai who was promoted to be an apprentice Supreme Kai. So with Universe 7, in terms of having 5 potential Supreme Kais, you can only assume that there was an influx of golden fruit being born from a tree that ultimately led to the 5 Supreme Kais existing at one point in time. Don't forget, they do live for an extraordinary long time as well. We'll have to do a video going more in depth about this, as it is quite a confusing matter. Regardless, to say the Grand Supreme Kai and the Southern Kaioshin to not feel they have enough battle power to put Moro down and feel like they had to imprison him. Moro must be extremely powerful. Now the reason Moro is so strong is because he eats all the life energy from a planet. So basically all the living organisms on a planet, he manages to take their life energy, their ki, and turn it into energy for himself. So when you consider that there are 30 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy alone, and there's over 100 billion to 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe, that's a lot of planets to be able to suck life energy from, providing they have life on them, of course. And we know that many planets have life on them. Shin did say there are only 28 planets with life on them, but I think he was talking about advanced civilizations that have warriors on them that are capable of fighting in the tournament of power. Well, Moro has literally been traveling around the universe, taking this life energy from each planet he finds life on and becoming stronger through that means. Now, that reminds me of another character from another series. Of course, he's in the title of this video, Galactus from Marvel. In the Marvel universe, Galactus is a godlike figure who traverses the universe looking for live planets to drain their energy from. You have probably heard of the term well-fed Galactus when it comes to power scaling and verse battles. That's because the more well-fed he is on planet's energy, the stronger he is. Doesn't that sound familiar? Well, it's not that Galactus has taken the idea from Moro the GOAT, because obviously Moro the GOAT is an upcoming villain in Dragon Ball Super. He's brand new, whereas Galactus has been around for approximately 50 years in Marvel Comics, first appearing in Fantastic Four issue 48 in 1966. Before Dragon Ball was even conceived in Akira Toriyama's brilliant mind. Now, whilst Galactus isn't quite a goat, what I would like to point towards is the hat that Galactus often appears to be wearing. Now, Galactus tends to appear differently to whatever civilization he is observable to, but more often than not, he is wearing a hat that has 2 curved horns on it. Now, obviously, it's a little different from how Moro's horns, being a goat, are. Moro's horns point downwards and Galactus's usually point upwards towards the sky, but they are very similar. Galactus feeds off living planets, whereas Moro feeds off the life energy on planets. So could it just be that once again Akira Toriyama has been inspired by Western fiction and has been inspired by Galactus in terms of creating Moro the GOAT in Dragon Ball Super? There are an abundance of examples of Akira Toriyama being inspired by Western fiction in his works, and most recently you could look towards Jiren the Grey as highly resembling Superman from DC Comics, Topo Batman, and Dispo the Flash. We know that Toyotaro likes American comics, so has he had an input or any influence on Toriyama to once again take something from the American comics, in this case Galactus from Marvel Comics, and employ it in his own manga? Of course, we will need to learn much more about Moro to actually determine whether that's the case, or maybe they'll reveal it in an interview. Maybe it's nothing to do with Galactus from Marvel at all. But I definitely wouldn't mind if they start going in that direction with these villains, changing the dynamic of the enemy or the villain yet again in Dragon Ball Super, something they actually have done well in Dragon Ball Super. In Dragon Ball Super, the antagonists weren't always your typical villain. For example, Beerus wasn't a villain. The legendary assassin Hit wasn't particularly evil, he's basically just an assassin. Jiren the Grey is basically a good guy fighting on the opposing team. And then Broly isn't evil either. Frieza's evil, of course, but he is a returning villain. And then, of course, Zamasu, you could say he was evil as well. But the rest of the villains weren't your typical villains. Antagonist would be a much better word to use. Now, Galactus isn't your typical antagonist either. Galactus ultimately needs to feast on planets simply to sustain himself. It's nothing to do with being evil or looking to take over the world or take over the solar system, galaxy, universe, or anything like that. He's just aiming to sustain himself. Could that be a avenue that Toriyama takes with Moro in the future? Let me know if you would like to see that. I think that would definitely be an interesting concept for a future villain in Dragon Ball. And considering that Moro, or Moro, however it would be pronounced, eats life energy, most likely Genki. Remember, Goku can actually gather Genki for his Genki Dharma from not just planets but stars as well. Could it be that Moro is actually just eating to sustain himself? That would definitely be an interesting concept and a new concept for an enemy in Dragon Ball. An interesting one if you ask me. So that is why Moro could be Dragon Ball's answer to Galactus. Let me know your thoughts on this down in the comment section. It's definitely an exciting time to be a Dragon Ball fan. Like I said, I didn't want this to be a news video. It's more of a theory, I guess you could say. Drop your thoughts down in the comment section. Hit that like button. Lend me your energy. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Until next time, Ad Astra.